Hi again. I don't know how long it's going to take me to explain and go into the next topic. I'll just discuss this as long as I need to discuss it. But the question that was posed to me is, how do you discern the saved in this hour? It's quite difficult, We live in a time that the Lord referred to where the wheat and the tare grow together. Now, Jesus explains who the wheat are and who the tares are. I don't want to get into that. You can look at the scripture and just read that for yourself. But the wheat are God's people. The enemy has his people. They are the tares. So there comes a point in time, even in the natural state of agriculture, where wheat and tare or weeds actually look the same. Have you ever seen some beautiful flowers in a field? Well, it turns out that those flowers are actually weeds. And you can't tell the difference between the weeds and the real flowers. And that is the end time state that we are in this season, where you cannot discern the difference between God's people and the enemy's people, because the enemy's people can be so religious and even look and appear like they are living a clean and righteous life. There are instances where people have gone to the altar in a church. They came to that altar with some kind of addiction. Let's say it was drugs or sex or alcohol. And they did a religious act at that altar, made a confession. Somebody laid hands on them. Something happened at that altar. And voila, they walked away from that altar with no more problem in terms of that addiction. So they assume that they're saved. Everybody assumes that they're saved because their outward life changed. Yet the reality is that they were not saved at all. And what actually happened at that altar is that the enemy perpetrated an even bigger fraud, because now that person is deceived, and everybody in the church, in the fellowship, is deceived and believes that this individual is saved when that individual is just drug free. And what the enemy will do to perpetrate a grander hoax, he will release his hands from the addiction and cause it to appear that God healed them. They begin to spout a whole lot of religious platitudes and jargon, and it looks like it's legitimate, but it's not. In fact, the very example that I just gave happened in my own personal life with someone in the family that I was close to. And he appeared to have a genuine, bona fide touch from God. There was a mighty deliverance that happened in his life as well. And so everybody just automatically assumed this is God. When time passed and we all got to see that it was not God, that he was not saved, even that the addiction was not gone, that came back too. But some people, the addiction doesn't even come back, and they go out and they're in the ministry and they become preachers, even ordained ministers. And I recently even got a phone call like that, where a man called me about his son. I think I spoke about it in one of my other videos. He called about his son. He said his son was demonized, severely demonized. I spoke to the son, and he was. And I said to him, well, are you born again? Is your son born again? And his response was outraged. His response was, we are members of the church. We are ministers of the gospel. And my response back was, well, if you really born again and saved, this ought not to be happening in your family. This ought not to be happening to your son. And unfortunately, they were too religiously proud to hear me at that time. Maybe they will call back. So I am going to be dealing with this issue until I got no more to say about it. But this is the grand hoax. I suggest that you go to my series, look up the one called, I believe it's False Conversions. And there is a particular message that I do on the great falling away, is what it's called. The great falling away. This is my point of view, you might even call it opinion. I'm not saying to you this is bona fide truth, but the evidence lines up for me that the great falling away is that the institutional church is not preaching the gospel of Jesus Christ. And therefore, the births that are occurring in or as a result of the ministry of the institutional church is a false birth. I call it a counterfeit birth, a false conversion. And so the question is not who is not saved. The question is, who is saved? You need to understand that the path to salvation is narrow, and broad is the wide gate for the tares. Excuse me. I gotta go cough. So I think I'll close this one right here.